And let's move on to this developing story as well and getting some analysis on the interview that we just had with Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola. We speak now to political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe. Prof, thank you so much for your time. A lot has been said during that particular interview, but one of the things that I'd like us to begin with is really going back to last week when Tony Ngeni, the ANC NEC member, was speaking about the issue of the land question. He says that the ANC appears to be reluctant to be implementing some of these resolutions that come from, that emerge from the Nasrec conference. Fast forward to listening to what Ronald Lamola has to say. He talks about how there's still willingness to be able to do this. Is there really willingness to move on the land question?
Well, first of all, the most important issue is that the ANC took that resolution in its 2017 Nasrec conference. So that was very clear that the ANC would be the prime mover. But the ANC was unable to do so, and we saw the EFF almost moving in, taking the initiative. So the issue of reluctance is something that one can say can be demonstrated by facts. The ANC only came to the party after the EFF has moved in. So the issue of whether there is a reluctance is something that within the ANC there is no agreement. Tony Ngeni is a member of the National Working Committee of the ANC. He's also a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. So is Lamola. So effectively, the two are not speaking the same language. So that is the first thing that we must indicate, that even in terms of how they perceive the development, members of the ANC are not in agreement. But what we do know is that it was not the ANC that put the matter on the table in Parliament. It was the EFF.
And when you then, listen to what they both have to say, they do admit, though, and speak in one voice to say that it's crunch time. They cannot afford to be continuing in the manner in which they have been. He says that, the ANC must really look at a process of self-correcting. At the same time, Tony Ngeni was saying last week that it's do or die. One of the things, though, that is quite clear is that the talk of self-correction continues within the ANC, but I'm not sure if it's able to do so because it's been talk for quite some time now, Prof.
Yeah, well, one must at least accept that the ANC is talking about the notion of self-correction, because when it says so, it admits that it has failed. And what the whole furor was all about was its failure, in a sense that post-1994 dispensation was supposed to usher a different reality for the majority of the people of this country. And as we speak, we've seen almost the reproduction of apartheid settlement. We've seen black people not getting land, but we see most of them being driven to conditions of squalor. We see most of them being the people who occupy squatter camps. We see them having a sense of not belonging. So that is a reality, the issue of land hunger, which the post-1994 dispensation should have addressed. But what emerges from the interview by the minister, and who appeared both as a minister and as well as a member of the NEC of the ANC, is the acceptance that we are in a process, like all democracies, they are an experiment. And from time to time, there is a need to review whether we are on track. So the notion of whether it's a crunch time, do or die, is simply an expression that says there needs to be a renewal. The ANC needs to reinvent itself, because as it is, more of the same will not work. And I heard the notion of stability and continuity. The question is, what are you continuing if the voters have actually told you that whatever you've been doing since 2017, we are not impressed. So the issue of self-correction cannot be something that you put on the notion of continuity. You need to do things differently. But if they think that it is about continuing, then they should await the outcome of 2024 national elections. So that is one thing. Then there's an issue where the minister also affirmed a number of issues. One, that even the Constitution I mean, this is obvious, and I don't know why people have been huffing and puffing about the Constitution being challenged or being under critique. The Constitution anticipates and expects that people will do that. It is a document that people have agreed on to say, we are going to use this document to move forward. This is what is called a living document. And Minister Lamola was almost suggesting that to say, yes, there are amendments. We need to deal with that. Then there's an issue of criticism. Yes, I think we can all agree that we need to make a case, not only state a case. And of course, there will be issues of protocols in terms of how you do it. The acting Chief Justice himself had also acknowledged, and it is very important, that judges can be criticized. But when we do it in a manner that you do it substantively, where you make a case, not only state it.
Prof, one of the things that really has been quite glaring is what the minister said in his capacity as the Justice Minister, is that, remember last year in June, that extradition agreement finally being finalized. But one of the things that I could not help but really raise my eyebrows at is that he's still waiting for the documentation or the papers to then be given to him in order for the Guptas to then be extradited. The fact that we are still waiting in a different year now for these papers to come forth, I'm not sure what it means then for the State Capture Commission of Inquiry's report.
Well, there are two elements. One, there's a general incompetence within the state in processing and in dealing with cases before it. Even the issue of mafia that we are talking about, you saw again the NPA blundering. So if we are going to talk about the state capture report, and one must also understand that the commission by its very nature did not allow rigorous cross-examination of witnesses. So when these matters go to court, that which appears to be obvious, once people start now making that process that was not available of rigorous cross-examination, you may find that we are going to be bogged down in pursuing these cases for a number of years. And the issue that Mr. Lamola was also agreeing to is that that is a problem because it may cost the state a lot of money. We have already spent R1 billion and we have not even scratched the surface. Because if one were to go back to the testimony of people like Brian, they had actually said, if we're talking about what happened in ESCOM during his time, you're talking about the commission focusing on Tegeta, which was supplying only 4%. And he asked, when are we going to talk about the 80% that is supplied by about the 4 companies, which rake billions year in, year out, and they've been doing it for the last 40 years. So if we really want to deal with the state capture, we need to, there's a lot that we need to do, but there's going to be a lot of interrogation of even the evidence that will be presented by the NPA in court.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for your time. And of course, this is also happening against the backdrop of the former President Jacob Zuma also still pursuing and reviving his bid then to challenge the refusal by the chairperson to recuse himself. But this is, of course, another development that we'll be watching in the public domain. Thank you so much for that. That was political analyst, Professor Sipho Seepe.